most top level sports, unless you are kind of tunneled into it at a young age, actually through an academy or something along those lines, you are spotted and, really kept disciplined, you're not going to become a professional or a decent professional, even F1, right? And like with MMA, right? And these, I know of people who've done this. You could decide at 48 years old that you want to start training and you can have a fight and you can get good at it. And that's awesome.
It's that ultimate like armchair fan, said I could do better than I could have a go at that kind of thing. And then they 100%. Can actually do that.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got a good coach, they won't put you until you're ready and they won't put you in against someone much better than you. But, that's the shady side of it as well, is you get people who come in not from gyms. Now, they come as independent fighters and they are just like journeymen coming in for, I don't know why, because there's no money in it. And they basically come in and get beaten up by the people from established gyms. I don't know why they do it. There's no money. But yeah, so there's, and you get that in boxing as well, but less so because there's more regulation.
From Coordinate Sports, it's The Drive Phase, a show about sports founders, leaders, and experts, and the stories behind their business journeys. Our guest in this episode is Max Cotton, founder and CEO of Another Round. Max is at the forefront of personal training tech, using AI to enhance client experience. Growing up, Max had a passion for combat sports, going on to train in Thai boxing before settling in Nottingham to study and begin his journey to becoming a pro MMA fighter. Following his career in combat sports, he embarked on a corporate career, but fitness was always his passion. Working as a PT in the city, he founded a successful adult training program before starting Another Round, which took off during the pandemic. Another Round is an app as well as a fitness program that uses AI to make personal training smarter and more affordable. In the company's latest funding round, Max secured investment from serial entrepreneur and founder of Pure Gym, Peter Roberts. During the episode, we discuss Max's journey and how he scaled Another Round during the pandemic. Enjoy the show.
Right, I'm really excited today to welcome Max Cotton, founder and CEO of Another Round, the AI-enabled online training app. Great to have you on today, Max, and hopefully we'll learn all about the world of AI and how it can help us be fitter, stronger, faster.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me on.
You too, mate. Almost did a podcast before we started, having a good natter there. Good chat before we got in. Yeah. But yeah, really want to dive in, and where we always start, which let the listeners get to know you a bit better. But I want to dive in and sit and normally ask about first sporting experience, but given your combat sports background, were you always a fighter growing up as a kid?
Yes and no, right? So like my brother and me, we used to, there's an 18-month age gap between us. So when we were kind of both on our feet, we were just scrapping the whole time with each other every day. That was just how and because I was always smaller than him, I would have to kind of just rely on trying to be either more aggressive or more underhanded but yeah, it was, that was kind of, it was something we loved. We watched what was back then WWF growing up. It's WWE now, isn't it? And WWF. And then, got into the UFC when we were sort of early teenagers, and then that would be just throwing on the holds that we'd seen on the UFC and that sort of thing.
So all the times they said don't try this at home, you were try
that immediately. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so that was kind of us. And I actually, because I wasn't really sporty at school, I was kind of athletic, but I never really got into sports at school. Didn't really gel for me.
Was that just because it was more like the traditional team sports format? And is that obviously you were athletic, but it just didn't fit with the kind of culture of it, was it?
It was a few things really. Poor discipline and short attention span. So I was diagnosed as dyspraxic when I was quite young, and the ways that it can, it's quite a wide ranging. And I think I had mostly quite mild, I don't know what you call them, symptoms of it. But for me, what I would say my main ones were a pretty poor concentration span. If I wasn't interested in something, I kind of couldn't really get into it or make myself interested in it or pay attention, and balance and bad hand-eye coordination. So, so I was kind of athletic, but quite clumsy. And so, also I didn't have this sort of discipline to want to get better at things. So when I then did find something I loved, which started with like boxing and Thai boxing, then jiu-jitsu and all the other stuff, it almost retrained my brain to an extent. So, I can still be a little heavy handed and like, I've still, if I tried to kick a ball, I don't know where it would go, but I've got actually really good reflexes, really good hand-eye coordination now, pretty good balance. It kind of, because I found something I loved, I actually really did focus on it. And I find I can focus really, really hard on things I enjoy. But if it's not got my attention at all, then, that's really always been the case. My strengths are my super strengths and my weaknesses are my super weaknesses.
And in terms of like school life, obviously you talked about the traditional kind of team sports and not really connecting with them. But from a, I guess, academic point of view, did that affect you on that side? Or like normally we more leaning towards the creative, like arts, music, etc.
So I loved English and history. I loved them. And so I was, always reading and was really interested in anything with the sort of story to it. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Not all periods of history. I found some of it really, really dull, but I enjoyed a lot of it as well. And I can still remember a lot of that stuff. Whereas sciences and maths again, it was a case I didn't enjoy it. I didn't engage with it. I couldn't hold my attention. Pretty much as the classroom door was shut, I wasn't really there.
So you must have had, I guess your report cards were like really glowing for some teachers and like terrible.
That was it, exactly. So when I got to like A levels, like I was fine because you just chose the 3 or 4 subjects you wanted to do. But up until then, it was definitely a mixed bag. I really, really enjoyed those. So I went to a grammar school in Kent. Cranbrook is this tiny town in the south, in Kent, southeast, and it was like the center of our universes at the time. And then I kind of, later on, no one had ever heard of Kent who didn't live Cranbrook. Even no one heard of Kent. No one heard of Cranbrook who didn't live there or near there. It's really strange to kind of pop out that bubble after school and find out that this was the center of the universe and the place that I always thought I would kind of move back to that area. Yeah, really weird that was the center of the universe. Cranbrook school, Cranbrook the town, but yeah, no one's actually heard of it.
And then obviously with that passion for the kind of humanities, I guess, subjects, is that what you went on to study?
Yes, I did, and it was a really bad decision. Before this, I was thinking, because I knew we were going to get into education. I'm still not sure that I should have gone to university in the first place because I didn't know what I wanted to do after, and I went and did English because it was what I was best at, and for all the reasons I liked reading a lot before I got to uni. I used to read books all the time, just used to devour books, mostly fiction. And that kind of stopped when I got to uni. I didn't engage with my course really. I think most of what we were reading, I wouldn't have ever chosen to read. It just started to just quickly suck the fun out of it for me. I found myself wishing I'd done either history or, in retrospect, something much more vocational or a business studies course, if I'd known where I was going to end up now. But the only reason I wouldn't take back that experience is because it, for whatever reason, has kind of led me to where I am now, and everything from meeting my wife to my first job to, not doing too well at a few jobs later and then become my own boss. So I wouldn't change it.
I was going to say, I think similar generation, I guess, myself and yourself, in terms of like at that time, I think that was the big push. Everyone should go to university. You've got to go pick. It was almost like pick which subject you're going to do at university versus what you're going to do.
That's it. So, and like that's the thing is like I think it's changed now, but there was this just arbitrary requirement for jobs for you to have a degree that makes no sense at all. Like sales jobs and recruitment roles and things like that. When I came out, must have a degree, and it made no sense at all. Why? And I found it, and I felt bad for people like mates of mine. For example, I remember one specific example where a mate of mine had been working in sort of B2B channel sales for this company, and he didn't go to uni. He just went straight into that route, smashed it for 3 years. But another mate of ours came out with a degree and came out as the guy's boss into the same job, right? And it was like the degree wasn't even like tangentially related to what he was doing as a subject. And I was like, and I remember at that time thinking, God, poor guy, and I just think that I think it's changed a little bit now. I don't think there's that big push now that you must have a degree. And I think it's good to kind of think of where you want to be and work backwards. But that's the other part of it, right? Is most people, when they go to university, have no idea like what they want to do after. Some people do, and they go and they just go into the well-trodden path that's been kind of laid out for them, what that they have done. But people like myself, it was just go and do the course that you think you enjoyed the most at school and see what happens.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's why you probably can learn lessons from the US, in terms of that, having the the minors, the first couple of years where you're kind of figuring it out and just picking things you like, and then you major. So totally agree. So when did you mentioned you kind of found combat sport boxing, Thai boxing? Was that pre-university? Or was that at university? It was one of those things like joined the society when you got to uni?
Yeah, a bit of both. So I started doing a tiny bit of boxing at school, and it was it was just like going to a boxing club in Hastings, like every week or every other week with some mates who were going. They drive up there. And that's when I first started doing that. And actually, the thing that I probably didn't like about that at the time was, I don't know if you've spent any time in amateur boxing clubs, but they are, which is quite a good thing, but they're quite strictly regulated, right? You don't just go in there and put on a pair of boxing gloves on day one and start hitting each other. Yeah. It's like...
is that what you wanted to do when you were on?
Yeah, And that's the good thing about a lot of MMA gyms is you do just, like, you can be hit each other on day one. And MMA as a sport is a lot less regulated. But with boxing, it tends to be the case that you'll go into this gym and they'll make you do X amount of drills, and then maybe you're doing body sparring in like week 3 or week 4. You're probably not going to be hitting someone in the head. Sorry, my dog. You're not going to be hitting someone in the head for, maybe 6 months, maybe longer. And then when you want to compete, you go, amateur for X amount of time. And then some people then go pro. So I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the feeling of getting to hit stuff. And it was really much more my thing rather than team sports. Mm-hmm. But when I did the kind of typical, went to Thailand, spent a bit of time there, spent a month in a Thai boxing camp. And that was so in between, to gap year. And I did I was only in Thailand for about 6 weeks. And for 1 month of that, I was in a Thai boxing camp. Just before I went to leave, I said to the coaches, I was like, this is quite a funny story, actually. So I was like, all right, I want to fight. And they kind of laughed, because I'd been training there, but I was still very, very green. And, I was no way in. Was
it different out there? You could strike in from day one.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. You go to Thailand, and straight away you're sparring every day
with a veteran or someone who's been doing it 5.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is quite a bad thing, right? Because if you're sparring with people who are much, much better than you, and maybe not being particularly. Basically, if you're sparring with people who are much better than you and maybe not taking it very easy, then you don't get better because you're kind of very stiff and you're not wanting to do anything or try anything. And then you're getting hit for it every time. So in Thailand, you could spar every day. And the problem was I was in a place in Koh Phangan, which is the party island, really not where most people go if they want to do serious Thai boxing, but I wanted the party and the Thai boxing. And you could do it at sort of 18 years old. It was easy. So
easy to recover then,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes getting in at like 3-4 in the morning and being up at 8 for the first training session, 2 hours, 4 hours a day, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. So before the end, I said, I want to fight to the coaches. And the coaches were like, kind of laughed. And then I think they saw sort of dollar signs in their eyes. And so they were like, yeah, leave it with us. So the next day, I was on the beach and I saw my name. I think it was probably misspelled and a completely made up weight for me. No one had weighed me, but I was on there. Probably what I think it was like 145 pounds something, which probably wasn't too far off at the time. And it said international fight, like England versus Thailand. And I was like, okay, cool. And then, so we go to the fight night and then they basically get 2 blokes, 2 not very athletic looking blokes. And they were like, which of these guys do you want to fight? And I was like, I guess the guy who looks marginally more athletic, like who's not like 2 foot shorter than me. So anyway, so they were like, I was like, yeah, really like. So anyway, so they put me in there with this guy, and the first round he kind of beat me up a little bit, and I was like, pretty rubbish, because I was pretty rubbish back then. And then the second round, I came out and I hit him with a knee. And I remember thinking that didn't really feel like it hit him, but obviously it did because he's back and he's starfished out and unconscious. And I was like, yeah, woo. So that was like my first experience of fighting of an actual like event. And then when I was at uni, and I dined out on that. When I got to uni, I started training more.
100% knockout record, right?
Yeah. But this is the bit where it gets quite funny. It's like I went to uni, started training a bit more seriously, loads of jiu-jitsu. I started doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu and the grappling, and I just realized that that's how my brain works. Much better with a striker. And I'd been doing it growing up. My brother did, learning it from watching it on the TV. So I was instantly had quite a repertoire of skills in it. And so I gravitated towards that. And then started training in the MMA gym in Nottingham. And as I started training more and doing more sparring with sort of highly skilled people, and as I was getting better, I watched that knockout a few more times. It was on YouTube, and I was like, I think that was fixed. And I look back on it now, like, oh my God, it's the most theatrical, like, it grazes him and he starfishes out on his back. And I realized now I'm just so embarrassed by it. And also, I did think it was odd that I saw afterwards the promoter go and give him more money than he gave me.
Yeah, that's a red flag for sure.
Yeah. So it was, as with going to university, whatever, I don't regret doing it because, again, it gave me the impetus to push on to what I did, the things I wanted to do next. And it gave me the confidence to then get into it. But it gave me too much confidence as well. And so that kind of I started my MMA career too confidently. And I did get legitimately knocked out on my second fight. And that wasn't fixed.
Hopefully we'll find that video, the type fight. We can post it. Yeah, we'll link it in the show notes or something. Yeah. So yeah, MMA, obviously, university, you talked about your experience there, but I guess coming out of uni, and how did things change in terms of, like, I know MMA, you training and the discipline to become pro, etc. And I assume it's like kind of all encompassing. Was that what you wanted to do, or were you always looking at like a kind of backup thing?
No, I wasn't thinking backup. Like
all in, yeah.
Yeah, the funny thing about MMA is, even nowadays, unless you're in the top sort of 15, 20 in the world in your weight class, it's not going to be a full-time job, which is crazy. There's just like it is.
I guess UFC back then, and it would be the goal, right? You want to get to the UFC.
Oh, yeah, and it still is for most people, right? It's arguable whether you get paid the most. You might get paid more in other organizations, but the exposure, the prestige is still.
Yeah, that's the controversy about fighters paying the UFC, right?
Yes, exactly. It's not good, but it was just the thing. So the thing I loved about MMA is, I talked about boxing before, where you have to come in and you have to do X amount to become an amateur. You can become an amateur, then you got to get your pro license, things like that. I mean, maybe it's a little different now, but back then, just so unregulated. When I first started, I don't think there was even amateurs. When I first competed, there was. But when I first started, my mates who are a bit older than me in that world had never had an amateur fight because it didn't exist. There was literally just pro fights. And the sort of the barrier to entry was just saying, like, get me a pro fight, please, to a promoter. That was it.
Well, that's the thing with boxing, right? So when you see the fighters who've come into it late, 18, 19, 20, whatever,
that's late,
that's really challenging. If you think about, like you said, you should, in order just to be able to fight, you have to do all the 10,000 hours before. And so anyone who's doing well in boxing and coming in like at an older age must be really talented. But
yeah, and that's what I loved about MMA, right? Is I left uni at like 2021, and having just sort of trained a bit in this, a fair bit in this sport, and as a massive fan, I knew that if I worked hard, I could do my amateur fights and then become a pro. And you can't decide to do that with tennis, football, cricket. I don't know about cricket, actually. Tennis, football, boxing. I don't know, like most top level sports, unless you are kind of tunneled into it at a young age, actually, through an academy or something along those lines, you are spotted and really kept disciplined, you're not going to become a professional or a decent professional, even F1, right? And like now with MMA, right? And this, I know of people who've done this. You could decide at 48 years old that you want to start training, and you can have a fight and you can get good at it, and that's awesome.
It's that ultimate like armchair fan, said I could do better. I could have a go at that kind of thing, and then they 100%. Could actually do that.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got a good coach, they won't put you until you're ready, and they won't put you in against someone much better than you. But, that's the shady side of it as well, is you get people who come in not from gyms, right? Mm. They come in as an independent fighter. I did for people who can't see me, that's inverted commas. Quotation marks. Now, so they come as independent fighters, and they are just like journeymen coming in for, I don't know why, because there's no money in it. And they, and they basically come in and get beaten up by the people from established gyms. I don't know why they do it. There's no money. But so and you get that in boxing as well, but less so because there's more regulation. So like MMA, I wanted to go to the UFC. That's what everyone wanted to do. But my point was, it was not enough to make that your day job unless you are willing to unless you can live at home with family and, happy to maybe do a couple of shifts of work a week.
So you had to establish another career alongside your training and competing, yeah. Where did that begin? I know obviously we're going to talk like PT and fitness industry, but was it straight into the fitness industry, or do you have...
No, not at all. So for me, it was kind of the reverse, actually. I started fitness when I stopped fighting. So I became an account manager for an IT reseller called Jigsaw 24. That was such a great job. So that was in Nottingham. So in Nottingham, I decided to stay up there after uni, and at the time I said it was because I'm not ready for like London yet, but really it was because I wanted to pursue mixed martial arts. And so I found a wicked job. And in my interview, I said to them, like, I was like, my passion is mixed martial arts, and that's what I will be occasionally coming into work looking like I've been at Fight Club, like, and they were totally chill with that. And they actually really liked it. They were quite a sort of forward thinking, not, it's not a tech company in the same way that like a Google or something like that, but they had that vibe to them. It was dressed like t-shirt, jeans, and they really supported that, which was great. And so, in Nottingham, the way the pace of life is, I would say, a bit slower than London. And, things like I work 9 till 5:30, and I would live in town, drive to work, 5:30 on the dot, get back in my car, drive home, 15-minute drive each way, not these ridiculous kind of London commutes you get. So I loved it. I had a great work-life balance. If I was in fight camp, I could train before work, come home, shower, drive to work, come home, go to the gym, boom, that's done twice a day. And I was doing that, in fight camp, I was doing that a lot. So I was working at that time. I felt like I had the best of both worlds, but I probably wasn't dedicating myself in my lifestyle as much as maybe a hungry fighter was, who, was just scraping by. I had a well-paid job.
It's slightly more comfortable, right?
Yeah, active social life. I did stop. I would stop going out and drinking when I was training for fights, but between it, I was going out Friday and Saturday with my workmates. I was a Monday to Thursday, trainer in those times. So I did that. Then eventually came down to London with my now wife, who I met at work. And that was kind of when things started to change for me, kind of, where I didn't know it, but at the time my fighting career was over.
What was that like, I guess, to take that decision to kind of call it a day?
The thing is, I never did. I never actually made that conscious call. It was more like I lost 2 fights in a row. I lost my second. So I won my first 2 professional fights, and on paper, I think they were fights I shouldn't have won. And then I lost my second 2 professional fights, which on paper, I think I probably should have won. And it was very mental. And I put it down to, at the time, that I didn't feel like I just didn't feel like I was progressing how I wanted to. And at the end of the day, it's like running a business. The buck stops with you. You've got to be accountable for everything that happens. And it's up to you how it goes. But I essentially decided that a big change was needed, and we were moving to London anyway. So, and I knew we moved to London sort of 6 months or so. So I was like, I'm going to wait till I get to London. I know a really, really good coach down there. He's been helping me out bits here and there. I'm going to just kind of fresh start. And then I'm going to start training with him and see where it goes. To me at the time, London was just London, right? I didn't know the difference between Tottenham and Bermondsey and, like Shepherd's Bush and Shoreditch, right? For me, I was used to Nottingham, Cranbrook, tiny town, Nottingham, bigger town.
You could travel across Nottingham in half an hour, 40 minutes max.
Absolutely, yeah. I love it. And come to London. I had no idea about boroughs and different sides. So I was like, living in South London, trying to train in Walthamstow and working in Central, it just wasn't remotely feasible. I was just like, the travel just to get to work, then to get to the gym and getting home. And I started to, my training started to drop off. I didn't even have time to get to the gym, just the standard commercial gym near work. And it was just, I got to the least healthy and fit I've ever been. So I'd gone from serious athlete to, just kind of out of shape city guy. And like, that was when I made that, with a push from my wife. She said, you're not even training at all. You're not doing any of what you love, and you're not healthy, you're not fit. This isn't your passion. I was working in IT still, and I wasn't any good at it as well. That's the thing. When I was in Nottingham, it was very inbound account management, and that was pretty straightforward, and you didn't really need to be that proactive. But when I came to London, it was obviously much more competitive, and it was pick up the phone and call people. I didn't have those skills. And, I didn't, and it's just, I just wasn't any good at it. The guy, I worked for a great company called ACS, and I just wasn't the right, I don't think I was the right fit really. And I tried and I just couldn't do it really. And so I wasn't making money, and I wasn't making good money, and I wasn't enjoying it, and I wasn't healthy. So I spoke to my boss, Michael, and I just said, I really appreciate the opportunity, because they kept me on longer than they probably should have done. But I just said, I just don't think I'm going to get any better than this. And I think I need to try something else. So it wasn't an intentional move into entrepreneurship or self-employment. It was just a kind of like, I didn't know what else I'm going to do. So I'm going to do something I like.
Yeah, do something you love. And then, so that was initially, were you straight into PT, or was it MMA coaching, or what was the kind of the thought process?
So what I did is I basically had this idea. When we were in fight camp, we used to do what we call fight circuits, where we do these circuits wearing MMA gloves. And that meant that we could go between hitting the pads to on the treadmill, because the MMA gloves are fingerless, right? And basically, when we were in fight camp, we used to do these fight circuits, really intense circuits that were designed, if you did them quick, you get it done under 5 minutes, which is the length of a professional MMA round. And then you have strict 1 minute rest between rounds, and then go straight into it. And if you get to the point where you're doing 5 rounds in under 5 minutes each time, you were super fit.
So that's like fight ready type.
Yeah. So, and what we did is we wore MMA gloves so that you could go from, using because they're fingerless, you can use a barbell into the treadmill, into hitting pads, into, so you didn't have to just take on and off boxing gloves. So what I did is I took that idea and I created 100% MMA. So 100% MMA was a bit of a misnomer in terms of it wasn't really like 50% MMA, because 100% was my nickname. It was Max 100% Cotton, which I actually didn't choose. I rejected that for a long time. And it was my Twitter handle was 100% MMA. So I just went, okay, we're just going to call it 100% MMA. And someone came up with a cool logo for me. And what we did is we essentially took that strength and conditioning element of mixed martial arts and made it into like fun workouts in a space I rented in Covent Garden. And we turned it into fun workouts, but you didn't get hit in the face. And so we just said, like, kind of experience the strength and conditioning without any, but you can go to work straight after and you haven't got
the pain.
Broken nose. Yeah. And then we did start to integrate, because I felt like we should. Then we did start to integrate some classes that were boxing and some classes that were MMA, just to get people used to the basics of it, the fundamentals, that sort of thing. But we, mostly fitness based, but then we did start to, because I felt like with a name like 100% MMA, we better start doing some actual proper.
Yeah. Did you get some clients who turned up expecting to be sparring?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Or the thing I really didn't want is because it was in the middle of Covent Garden and most people hadn't really heard of it. They'd maybe heard a bit of the UFC. I didn't want people coming and doing it and then thinking that they had been, coming for a few months doing fitness and then thinking that they would be ready for an MMA fight because they've been kind of, hitting a bag and doing some burpees. So that's also the other reason we did start to bring in the classes as well, not to get people fight ready, but to kind of actually teach them some of the things they should be learning from mixed martial arts.
It sounds like that'd be like super popular in location and stuff. Did you get a lot? How was it from business point of view?
It was a great idea. It was just a terrible business model. So I'd done my PT qualification, but I was intent on just franchising out this 100% MMA. Franchising is the wrong word, actually. We wanted to build our own gym and then build a string of them. And when you first start forecasting for a business, it's very easy to get carried away that you're going to be, doing so amazing. And within sort of 12 months, you're going to have 4 locations and this, that, and the other. And everyone loved the workouts. We had crazy high reviews, even when I had other coaches doing the workouts for me. So it wasn't just a sort of me thing because I loved it. We had great reviews on things like ClassPass and things like that because
I was going to like the concept, the group-based high intensity circuit training. It's like, it's a model that works, right? Like all the F45 and all that stuff.
Exactly. And then you throw punching into the mix, brilliant. Like, everyone loves punching stuff. So, and we even had ground and pound, right? So we had these bags that you could get on top of and just, you're on top of it, just punching it, hammer fisting it, and people loved that. And I think it was a really great idea. Business model was terrible. I didn't really have any understanding of sort of what it was going to cost to get to the next level, or even to get out of that gym. I knew nothing about investment or anything like that. I did take out a startup loan at the time for about I think it was £6,000 or £7,000. And that was a really good process actually, because it got me ready for kind of learning how to forecast things. That it's a lot, you go through a lot of work to unlock not very much money, but they do teach you some really, really great skills in sort of launching, running your business and kind of understanding a little bit about everything you need to know. But I mean, 100% MMA, I folded that after about 18 months. That's one of the decisions I'm most proud of, actually, that I only probably kept it going 3 or 4 months longer than made sense. I know it sounds daft to be proud of that, but I've just seen people, it's that sunken cost fallacy, isn't it? If I'm using the right term there, where because you put a lot of time into something, you're really reluctant to let go. But, I recognized the point where this wasn't viable anymore. It was never going to get to where I wanted it to be, and just started looking to how am I going to shut this down.
Cool. I think so. Then I guess you're thinking about how am I going to take it where I want it to be. That shows obviously the ambition, and you wanted something bigger and I guess it's something that's going to scale rapidly. So what was the next move after that?
So the next move was interesting. So I'd already started PTing at that time, right? So when I started 100% MMA, I had that money from the startup loan sitting there. And I was like, according to my crazy forecasts, I was going to be fine within about 2 months. I wasn't going to need to do anything else. I wasn't going to need my PT qualification. Then I realized very quickly I was going to need that. So I started PTing, just freelance, and so if I'd gone one route to uni, I had friends then who come out the other and got into doing this. So like I done like my work in sales and onto this. My friends who'd gone gone to work like finance and things like that, or sales, we're kind of at the point then 7 years after university, maybe not quite 7, 5 or 6 years after university, but they were looking for PTs. So I then was like, okay, cool, I'll be a PT. So I PT'd for a bit. I PT'd like consistently from then. So this is 2017-ish, 2018, PT consistently from then until kind of at the end of the pandemic, like at the end of the pandemic, like I only stopped PTing consistently about a year ago, I'd say. So I got the bug for a business, definitely at that point. And nothing wrong with being a PT, but if I was going to be a PT, for example, I wanted to get busy and then have other PTs working for me and doing other bits and kind of.
It's like how can you build that?
Scale it. How can I scale it?
Scale and the impacts here rather than just your own time. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. I just felt that like I had this feeling that for me, I was going to fall out of love with personal training earlier than a lot of other people. And like I was saying about my personality before, I thought I'm going to get to the point where I'm not interested in learning. I'm not able to focus or concentrate on these one-to-one sessions where I get paid a lot of money. I never wanted to get that point. I was very aware that probably was going to happen at some point. So I love PTing. PTing is such a fun job. You meet great people. You're on your own terms because when you're freelance. And yeah, I liked it, but I never got ahead doing it. And I was always looking for the other thing to do. So first things first, is my wife at the time said, you need to get online. You need to get online. So this was 2018 at that point, because she's already talking about in 2017. I was like, 2018, I was like, look, online fitness is never going to be a thing. Like, but I just said, all right, I was like, I will start an online business as well. So I did start.
So we're talking online, we're talking kind of, I don't know, programs, online coaching, nutrition programs, those type of things? Or
it's just kind of workout programs to start with. Here's your program, kind of
so not content, no like content production or anything. It's just like purely here's the program you need to follow.
Yeah, very early version of kind of what we've got now. Where we just released our own app, and the Another Round app, that is. And this is really, really back then, different company name, different look, feel, ideas, and, completely different. But it was the first taste I had of doing fitness from a computer. So I did that. So I kind of set that up, and I think I recruited a few people from 100% MMA and then a few people from my friends, family, schoolmates on that. And then at the same time, shortly after, what happened? Actually, there's a bit of an interim period where I was mostly PTing, and I set up the online company, but it was very much a side hustle, that. And then I got an opportunity to speak to WeWork, right? I had friends who were at WeWork I'd met through some boxing classes I was taking. And they said, look, if you come and start doing some free events for us here, just sit at a table, talk about fitness, that sort of thing, if you can kind of get on side with us, we could probably get you in a month or two's time doing classes here, good money, consistent weekly schedule. And so I did that and I was like, wow, WeWork's massive. I hadn't really heard of them. And then I looked at it and I was like, okay, well, actually, we're going to turn this into a business. So we turned
it. You already got the platform to scale it across, right?
Yeah. And I already built up the trust and I was like, okay, yeah, we've got there was WeWork were going through that ridiculous and now, as we know, unsustainable growth period at the time. And they were just spending on everything as well. They were just like, yeah, cool, we'll get you in. £100 a class. Yeah, we'll do one of these a week, and we're going to go on for a minimum of X amount of weeks. Although interestingly, they said we will not do contracts at the time. They're like, we won't do contracts. There's always a red flag. So as much as we had it agreed in principle for X amount of time, they did say, we've made very clear that we can let you go the minute before the class starts. And that didn't turn out to be as big a headache as I thought it would be, but it was definitely worrying on trying to build a business on those grounds, and also meant that when things did start to spiral a little bit for WeWork, we had the immediate knock-on effect of that. But in before that time, we had a pretty good time, and we had a team probably of 3 or 4 other trainers and myself, all subcontracted, and they got paid well for it. I thought, we basically, just being totally transparent on the costs, we charged £100 and I paid the trainers £66. So, 2/3 of that. And so then that was better for them to get a class anywhere else, right? And they also sometimes just take their laptop and hang out and WeWork for the afternoon. So we were at any given time, we were in sort of like 3 to 5 WeWorks doing 1 or 2 classes a week. And it was good for me, right? Because sometimes I'd be doing a class. So all the money goes into the company. And when I knew that 2 other classes were going on at the same time and the company's making money as well. And that was what I really enjoyed. I was like, I really like that side of it, like where you're working, but you're not working, money's coming in and I'm not. The thing about PT, for example, was you have to be there delivering to make money. And I really, really wanted to build a business where it's the only way you can build a scalable business is where money is happening when you're not directly there pressing a button or telling someone to do something, right? So I was so that was quite a cool thing, and that was going quite well. And I thought, this is the one, this is the business. This online business I've got is cool and everything. I will let that grow, and then, but this workplace wellness is going to go big, and I had plans to scale it globally. I say plans. I mean, it was kind of head in the clouds, sort of a couple of spreadsheets and things like that. But
that's the vision, though, right? You've got a great partner, and you can see the kind of route to how that would. The line of sight to get in there, yeah.
And and I knew I had to find other clients, but WeWork because of the no contract thing. But I knew that and we had a few when they had their sort of wobble around when they planned to IPO, things kind of we struggled to get some. We struggled to maintain a bit of business there. They started to cut back on their spending a little bit, and then obviously things were just trying to get back on its feet, and then COVID hit. And the worst industry I think to be in was probably offering on-site fitness classes at offices.
But then the best one was having an online fitness business on the side.
Exactly, James. Yeah, exactly.
So you planned it all along.
We'd been online fitness for 2 years at that point when the first lockdown hit. 2 years is like an eternity on online coaching, especially when every PT and their dog is trying to become an online coach overnight. And we'd done the 2 years of like testing, failing, learning, the painful stuff, all the stuff that we took that we knew how to motivate people to train online, how to follow a program. We just
like that remote communication and mentoring and coaching
exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that was my sweet spot, because I come from, the job I had after uni was just emails all day, right? I could do that all, no problem. I knew how to scale that business up. And the first thing I did was did it slightly cheaper than competitors and train more people because I knew I could do it well and have processes in place. But before we had AI or anything like that, it was just like I knew
you got it all dialed in. So efficiency wise, you can take twice as many clients as those guys who are just kind of jumping off, just trying to get online and start going. Yeah.
We did crazy deals as well. We were like, sign up with us in lockdown. We'll send you a kettlebell, things like that. But unfortunately, that didn't last.
So I was going to say, is that you who had all the supply then? Because no one.
Well, this is the problem. Yeah, we had that deal, and then we had to change it to we'll give you 50% off your first month because it turned out we had a lot of people that we had kettlebells to, and they're about £300 each. It was a good idea in principle. We did get some kettlebells to some people, but it was just turning up. I was a one-man band doing. My wife did the website, and I was just there, just content every day, speaking to the members every day. What else was I going to do? We're just sitting at home. Like you could you're either just doing fitness or drinking if you're at home.
It was one or the other, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was kind of the first and second half of the day, right? No, and I was super fit. Like I was so lean and lean because I was just doing hundreds of burpees. I was doing workouts. We did also do some live classes as well. We did mixture and we kind of tested both, and then thought live would sustain past lockdown, but after lockdown, live just died.
Just fell off a cliff, did it?
Yeah, no one was interested. So yeah, so that's kind of where we got to where we are kind of now, really. And when I came out of lockdown, I never really went back into PT properly after the first lot. I came back to a couple of clients here and there, but I realized that what it had taken, I was working those first couple of weeks of lockdown, no exaggeration, probably 60-hour weeks, just to push this new business and record hundreds of new videos using a rucksack and things like that, all these new bodyweight exercises and testing and writing new programs and selling. Like if you'd ever said hi to me or something, or we were connected on Facebook or something, you got a message asking if you were interested. I just did what I had to do. So That was that first intense bit of lockdown. And what I realized, the amount of time, work, and I tell those people a lot, that it took to get my side hustle into my main job, I realized there was no chance I could go back to PT, even if it meant I was going to make a bit of extra money each month. I knew that I had managed to get this little beast going, and I needed my attention and my energy and my time to keep growing it. And so
it's interesting because it feeds into what you were saying before about kind of your personality. You've got that kind of that bug of like, I'm all in on this, and you've driven it all the way to a point where it can go further. You want to take your foot off the gas and go back to the day job.
Absolutely, yeah. But that's it, all in on it. And I think it was a big wake up call that I never would have got it to where even halfway where I need to be if I kept to the side hustle. And I say this to people. I said this to someone the other day who said he's a young fighter, and he said, I'm thinking of launching my own business. And I went, don't. Because your business then is your fight. It's your everything, and you will have to start missing training. If fighting is your main thing you want to do, if you have an emergency in your business, you're missing training, even if you've got a fight 2 weeks time. And I said, it's a real. I don't know of many. I can only talk from my own experience and people I know, but no, I don't know anyone who's built a successful side hustle to a point where it just naturally overtook their. Most other people, it's the complete opposite. If they didn't have a side hustle that became profitable and then eventually like, all right, I'm not going to work on Monday. It was the complete opposite. It was like, I'm not going to go into work. I'm going to quit my job and I'm not going to make any money. And it's going to take a long time for this to make money. It's like the opposite of the side hustle dream. So that's kind of what I'd say to people is like, you're deluding yourself if you think you're going to make this as a side hustle. And maybe there are exceptions to that rule, but I would say there probably aren't many. And I've said it to a lot of people have said it to me, and I've said, look, for example, I had someone who was saying they wanted to get investment, and I said, but this is your full-time job is working in finance, and he was like, yeah, and I was like, what investor's going to invest in your side hustle? Like, they want, if they're going to put their money into you, they want to see that you're working full-time in their business. So I think if you want, I think that would be my one takeaway to people. Side hustles don't work.
No, it's a bit of a hot take as well in terms of how it's portrayed in social media and stuff like side hustle is the way to go, etc., etc. Or you can build. But I'm really interested in one thing I really want to talk to you about is kind of where two things. One is you mentioned investment there and that journey for another round would be great to speak about, but also the AI factor as well. So where did that come in? Because when you see AI now, and it's something I'm really interested and kind of excited with for the future. But
yes,
and I can see how it would fit in. But where did you initially think, well, you need some AI and are you technical? How did you get that kind of embedded?
No, not technical at all. It was conversation with Frankie, wife again, and basically it was April, maybe a little bit before April last year, and we were basically saying, look, we're going to scale this business because we know this mode of training works, this online coaching, this way works. It's hugely scalable, but how do we do it? So the first thing I thought of was, okay, well, if I can train 1 to 60 people with these processes, I can teach that to next PT and whatever. We can keep going with these processes. But I was like, at PT 4 or 5 or 6, I'm going to start worrying about quality control. How are we going to, and then what about when we get to PT 10 or PT 50 or PT 100, right? How are we going to make sure we're doing a good job? And the only thing that made sense to me at the time, and the only thing that still makes sense to me is AI, right? You take if you want people to train people how you want to do it, you need to give them a tool that tells them how you do it. So that basically started out as, okay, let's figure out a way to find someone who can build this AI model that is basically how I program, but how my current process is just automated. So the whole thing from the beginning was, we're never going to fully automate everything. We're never going to remove the human element of support, accountability. That's always a human relationship. And even now, we're never going to automate the programs fully. We're never going to make it so that the trainer just rocks up and sees the program at the same time the client does. It goes through the trainer can sense check it and can say, yes, that. No, they said they've got a shoulder injury, not that. That sort of thing. And it's actually right now, it's kind of doing maybe like 50% of the work. We wanted to get it to a point. We're getting it to a point pretty soon where it's going to be doing 80 to 90%.
Awesome.
And then it's more going to be like an approve or deny system, approve those exercises, tweak that one, change that sort of thing. So that's
with the model then, sorry to cut in, with the model, you've got the AI there and let's say it gets to 90%. Are you saying that that's there as a tool to support your network of trainers, or is that just that Max can now train everyone can train?
No. So no, that's exactly it. It's there to support the trainer. So the trainer can take on, 50, 60, 70 people and train them in the equivalent of 2 days a week. So that most of their time is actually spent supporting the member, supporting them either with the technical elements of their training, like I'm finding this pain in my knee when I'm doing lunges, the emotional side of it. So it's, just like, I'm overwhelmed right now. I'm really struggling with this. What should I do with my training? Or it could be just as simple as the accountability. You be checking with them every week. Did you do it? Did you have a look? Because we can see their training. No, why didn't you do it? Or hopefully, yes, you did it. Great work. Let's do it again. Or somewhere in the middle. Okay, well, you hit 1 out of 3 sessions. How can we do 2 this week? So that's the bit that only a human can do. So that's our whole ethos is we'll automate the bits that don't need a human and leaves the coaches more time and headspace to do the bits that a human's needed for. So that's kind of our model.
Yeah, and I guess for the trainers, they're going to love that because I'm guessing all the bits that the AI is taking care of are all things they don't want to do anyway. I guess admin.
To a point, when you've written enough programs, you do because trainers a lot of time will leave things to the last minute as well. So, they get to a Sunday and they've got to write 20 new programs. Are they going to do them well? Did they go out on Saturday? That sort of thing. So it's quality control, but also it's fun and you learn stuff, because sometimes tend to get into a mindset of, as a trainer, recycling the same 50 exercises in different ways. Our AI knows 400 and we're going to get that to 1,000. So it gives you the thing, I had forgotten about that, that deadlift variation, or I've forgotten about this. So then suddenly expanding their horizons, they can still change things as much as they want. That's the other thing. And the other thing is they'll still write some programs from scratch, right? Someone comes in and they've had 2 back surgeries. We will get to the point where we are trusting the AI with that, with some of that decision making. But right now we just say, okay, red flag, this person needs, now the coach has the time to spend on that program and making sure it's really, really safe. And then we can get it to the right coach who has those qualifications. Right. So it's safeguarding is really, really important. So what we can say is, right, the people with more ordinary or standard goals, should we say, who don't have severe injuries or anything else, stopping them from, then actually the AI is going to create a better program for them probably than the coach will. And they add in the coach tweaking and, adding a few things in, and also enjoyment's very subjective. So if I'm training you, James, and then you tell me you don't enjoy this type of movement or whatever, I then know that I'm going to tweak that in your next program. So, I really like this one. Can we keep it in? So then I'll make sure that feature's in there. So it's really a perfect combination. And then this is the point where I'd like to mention our new CTO, Jess. So Jess was the one who built our AI. So she was working at a company called Proprietary. And as soon as I met her, this is sort of late summer last year, I was like, I hope we can get Jess into our business one day. And so we made that happen in October this year, but we worked with her the whole time. So Jess built the AI model, and kind of her, even though she spends a lot of her life dealing with AI and she's a real expert on it, she kind of feels like there are very few instances where you should go full AI and not keep humans in the loop. She says 70 to 80% of AI projects fail, and that we should be trying to keep humans in the loop for safeguarding and quality, because it's a myth that AI does it better. It does it quicker. So you want to choose the things it should do quicker.
doesn't
outperform humans in most instances.
Yeah, and I guess there's an adoption curve as well with that from your customers. Yeah. I guess you go full AI, it might be a bit unnerving or whatever for them. They might not.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're really transparent with them about how we use it. And, it's just to make their experience better, like 100%, to make it better, to make it more scalable and quality control, right? It's just like, so we trust the coaches to do a really good job, but we want to just give them the tools they need to do that consistently. So that's the AI side of things. And that's what made the business scalable. And then that's what I think, to answer your kind of first question about the investment, is that was then what I think also made it investable, because until it was scalable, it wasn't investable. And without AI, it wasn't. So we didn't do AI because it was a buzzword. I will go for the right tool for the job. I wasn't interested in starting a tech company.
Yeah, it's not a gimmick, not just for the sake of it, having it on there.
No. And we're only using AI where it makes sense. And then so that's what we do. Jess and I, we sit down when we're looking at kind of the projects we're coming on. We go, okay, what's AI? What's education? And what is tech but not AI, for example? Like, what are rather than let's just put AI everywhere, we have this kind of like methodology of like, okay, well, this is education. This bit doesn't make sense to use AI. This is better to create a course for the trainers and then support them as they do it and that sort of thing. Yeah. Then this is tech, but it's not AI. This is actually like more like a CRM where we are making sure we're capturing the right information that the trainer needs to remember that it's James's birthday next week. So that doesn't require AI, right? It just requires some data input and some reminders coming in. So that's kind of like the three-pronged approach, really, is like tech usually in the form of an app and what data that's giving to the coach at what time. Education. So what are we doing there? We're just educating the coaches, educating the members as well. I've got a really good example of that in a second. And then AI is kind of like, what do we need an AI to do? And it's actually much smaller than you would think in our business. Most people think that AI is the beating heart of our business. I would say it's an enabler. And if it doesn't make sense one day, we've said, if something is a better tool for the job, we'll stop using it.
And what's, I guess, you mentioned investment there, but investing for the future and scaling, etc. What's the future look like for you? Or what's the vision for the kind of 3 years out? Where do you want the business to be? And
yeah, so we are at the moment. So I think first and foremost, for me, it's a technology mission. So how can we be the absolute best at building the technology in our quite niche area of online coaching? How can we, online coaching, online PT, how can we make sure that Another Round is just the leader in that, and product, actually, let's say product rather than tech, because it's those things I said, like education as well. So how can we make sure that using the lessons we learned over the last 4 to 5 years and the impact of the team as well. So for example, I brought in a coach, Sam, realized that a lot of his programming is better than mine. So he now has more input on a lot of the coaching, right? And how we train that AI. I do some things better than me. He does a lot of things better than him. I do some things better than him. He does a lot of things better than me. How can we start? And then also we start to look at who else are we going to need next year to make the product better. So product first is what I'd say is like, we want to be right now. We're at a point where we are human and tech. And I think we're going to move to a point where we're still keeping humans in the loop, but we have created a really, really, really smart AI model that can start to interpret feedback from what's called natural language processing, whereby people can write in, I didn't like that exercise, whatever, type it on their phone because it hurt my Achilles or whatever. And then that can be turned into, that can be basically turned, used as an input to tell the model to either not give that exercise next time or a variation of that. And also we can start to aggregate that data as well. So we're a little while off this yet, but we can basically say, this person with these goals, age, weight, height, gender, these sorts of people who put these answers to their questionnaire did well with these types of programs in their first program. We need a lot of data to get that right. So
you can start, and you're starting to suggest, and normally that's when it starts feeling like magic, right, with AI, because it's like suggesting, you think, all right, that's
it's starting to become, exactly. And then we're going to start to achieve more consistency, I think, and more quality. Like, as when I talk about quality control, it's like, this is with online coaching. The thing is, it sometimes takes, same with in-person coaching, it takes a couple of weeks to get it bang on, because you have this information from one questionnaire, You come up with a program. Hopefully you get it right, totally right. But more often than not, there's a few tweaks that they've made. So maybe over time we can use data to make sure we're getting it like off the bat perfect on day one. That would be great. So, like being the very, very best at what we do consistently and staying at the top, because I do think more people are going to come in and do what we're doing. That is the goal number one. And then goal number two, in terms of where do we want to be, I think I'm thinking at the moment in terms of impact. So we are personal training right now is very exclusive, and it only really serves probably less than, we're trying to work it out, less than 0.5% of people, like less than 1 in 200 people. So it's very exclusive, but there is a bigger need for personalized fitness outside of that, right? Of one-to-one personalized fitness, because I think it's what gets the best results. What is personal to you based on your goals and you is going to do better than a cookie cutter program. Sorry, I've got to grab something from the door. Is that okay? I'll start. So essentially what I'm looking at now is impact and how many people can we reach with our technology. And there's a few ways of looking at that, but essentially when you look at in-person, like personal training, it serves probably less than 0.5% of the population. And so 1 in 200 people or less. So it's very exclusive, but I think there is a much greater need for personalized fitness than that. And that's what we want to do. It sounds too, I like the phrase saying democratizing personalized fitness, but it's kind of, I can see how that sounds like a bit of a Robin Hood mission, which is not. But what we're trying to do is basically, give way more people access to a personalized program that's based around them, their goals, injury history, likes and dislikes. And that's what we're building.
You're right, though, I think, in terms of like democratizing it. I mean, you said 0.5% or whatever it is of the population, 1 in 200. It's probably, I don't know, nowadays, maybe half of the population needs some personal training or needs some support with their health goals and fitness, etc. So it's not, it's not Robin Hood, I guess, it's demand's there, just maybe the price point, isn't it?
Exactly. The demand is there. And I think that even in a struggling economy, as we kind of get deeper into cost of living crisis, I think that this is going to be even more in demand because less people can afford the very high end of it. So I think that, we're offering something that is essentially the same cost as one personal training session for your month of training, for unlimited training. So we kind of want to change the conversation around what it means to PT with someone and say, look, no, the personal bit is your personal program personalized to you and you get supported by a person, right? How many times can I say person in one sentence? That's the personalized side of it. And if you can just get yourself, and also it's flexible, right? It's like the other reason PT is I train online some people who could afford to personal train with an in-person trainer every day, but they don't have the time, right? They're working in private equity. They're flying all over the shop. They would probably end up bailing on more than half of their PT sessions because those are rigid and they are set in a certain location at a certain time, which has to fit the PT and not that person. So the other side of it is the convenience is not just cost is the biggest barrier, but then convenience and time is the second one. So what we are looking at in terms of impact, I think we've got the potential to reach millions of people globally with our technology, whether that is us directly or whether we end up, doing that B2B and we end up saying like, okay, well, how can we enable other teams to use our technology? So like
take it where you've got the captive audiences and plug them in.
Yeah, exactly. We want to be the very best at what we do within our another round team. But as I said, I think there's a huge market demand for this that is largely untapped. Let's see if we can take this to a wider audience through different channels. And that's where the impact bit comes in. That's where I say, that's where we can quickly start to, through our technology and our methodologies and our education and our, and everything else and the technology that isn't AI, then we can start to build this into something that's much, much bigger.
And so just switching gears a little bit, I know we're talking obviously fitness and kind of wellness. Do you have anything where obviously startup life's tough, there's a lot of ups and downs, disappointments, etc. Do you have anything where any ways that you manage the stress, or is it purely just living the clean life, healthy living and working out? Anything else?
I'm not as healthy as probably you or my members think I know. I am healthier than your average person, but I do have, for me, I still need to train because it's great for my head, whether I still train MMA, on and off, very on and off, and work always has to take priority for me doing that, but I still train. I've got weights in the office. I got into running and ultra marathons a bit at one point, but I don't do it anymore. And so I do need to train a lot for my head because it is a ridiculous amount of stress. Obviously, like it's just sustained stress. So exercise is really the most important one. That there's two ways you can go really when you get that stressed. And one is obviously to knock back a few whiskeys, and that might give you short-term relief from the stress. But then the next day you're not gonna sleep well, and you're gonna wake up feeling anxious, and you're gonna be unproductive. It was called a vicious cycle. Or if you can get into your fitness a bit, then it becomes a virtuous cycle where you use that to channel your stress, and then you sleep better and you wake up with, feeling better, less stressed, less anxious. So I think for most people, for myself, it's a balance of those things, right? It's like I love my training, but I also love to let go a little bit as well. And it's just kind of keeping that balance there. But I think there's nothing like exercise for stress management. I think whether that exercise for you is going on long walks or swimming or croquet or whatever it is that takes you out of that, because that's the thing it is for me, is it's the only time, especially when I'm doing like jiu-jitsu or boxing or sparring, where I've recently had situations where I've been having the most stress, and I know I've had such a stressful morning, and when I go to the gym, and because I'm with these, I'm 34 and I'm training with these 20-year-old killers who are like punching and kicking me in the head, suddenly my business problems, I don't think about them for an hour.
No, you can't think about them, but you can.
Yeah, you can't. You've got this different problem in front of you, right? There's different like sort of like 200-pound 20-year-old problem. It's like, it's quite nice because then you get it all out, and then you're like, okay, you come back to it with a fresh lens, fresh perspective, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm better equipped to deal with that. And that's why, even though I work pretty silly hours at the moment, and weekends as well, every now and again, if the sparring session is 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm going down the sparring session. I'm not, because I don't work normal people hours. So part of that flexibility is every now and again, if I need to, I can go train in the middle of the day. So don't do it too often. But yeah, I would say, so long-winded answer your question, I would say stress. There's nothing better for it than from routinely staying your exercise. And it's funny because sometimes you feel like you don't have time for exercise, but by taking that hour and a half out, including, travel, you're so much more productive after that. You probably get more done in that day than you would have done if you just sat there, just staring at the business problem and stressing it and going between jobs, just hopping between jobs. I'm on Slack, I'm on email, I'm like on our app, it's actually, I think for most people, that's the case. Like fit in the exercise and you'll become more productive.
Yeah, no, love that. And yeah, totally agree. I've always thought about it as, the way I think about it is like brushing your teeth. It's kind of like with exercise, it's almost like you wouldn't go more than half a day morning. You always brush your teeth. Whereas if you don't do it in the morning or you didn't do it before bed, you feel the difference of it straight away. So it's like,
that's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah, that's totally right. And there is almost like a sort of like cleansing, process that goes on when you exercise, where you kind of like almost flush out a lot of, you introduce positive, hormones and endorphins, and you lose a lot of the negative ones. So there is a cleansing going on. But
if you don't do it, you don't feel quite right. There's something there. It's like, oh yeah, I don't feel good today.
But those things will build back up again, and you need to brush your teeth again to get rid of them. I like that. I'm going to steal that.
It's all yours. Yeah, it's all yours, Max.
That's awesome.
I probably stole it from someone else anyway. So yeah.
Nice. I love that so much.
With just being obviously respectful of the time, etc. We've gone over a little bit, but yeah. So last question for me in terms of reflection, and it's just always looking at personal development, etc. So who have you had to become to be to do the job you're doing now? So to lead this startup tech enabled business, what skills and who have you had to become to lead?
So I think for me, the lessons I learned from, and I don't know how much of it was nature and how much was nurture, so how much of it I already had and how much of it I learned from training and competing for fights. But they gave me, I thought, a pretty good skill set for starting a business. So it teaches you accountability, it teaches you resilience, it teaches you to just keep showing up and to, take crushing disappointment and just get back up and keep going. And I think that's just one of the things that you just need to be able to do. It teaches you confidence. So I think they were the great things. Like they were really, really great lessons for starting a business, and just sometimes being able to grind without even knowing if it's going to work what you're doing. And that was a lot of what fight camp was, just grinding for like 8-12 weeks and not knowing if you're going to win at the end of it. And that was, I could, when I first started 100% MMA, I could lock myself in this room and just send emails, intro emails all day with a probably 1 in 100 reply ratio. And I was writing them all myself, right? So grinding, like that's, you've got to know to grind in the right places. But like, I think it taught me a lot about that. But what I then think the person I had to become is the person I had to become in the last year. When you start growing a team, that is something where, especially if you kind of come from a sport that is not a team sport where, so much of it is just on, obviously you train with friends, you've got what is kind of, ostensibly your teammates, they're not, it's only you who goes out there and fights. So I think then you have to kind of unlearn that solo mentality of like trying to do everything yourself and also learn how to communicate in a team as well, right? And like I missed a happy days, like, want to be everyone's friend. And we have such a wicked team, and I am everyone's friend. I love them all to bits. They're awesome. But like, then you've got to remind yourself to be consistent. And like, so it's like, if I then get annoyed about something, I've got to think about how I frame it because, this morning you're the best mate. And then because you maybe external facts have annoyed you, and then something they've done was not how you wanted it, you've got to make sure you then don't just switch on them and be like, what is this? Like, this is terrible, because actually, and that's so the person I'm having to become now is a measured, consistent person, whereas I came from like fighting. I think if you get in a cage to fight people, you're probably not very risk averse anyway. And that can be quite good in business up to a point. Obviously you need to have some sort of risk management. And I've learned more of that. It's one thing I had to be. But I think the biggest person the thing I've had to be the most is learning how to manage people. And I'm still learning that at the moment. There's loads of other things that aren't in my skill sets, but I get help with those things. But this is the only thing where I don't really have help with. It's like, I am that person. I can't delegate management when I'm CEO. I am management.
Yeah. And as I said, everyone's still learning, always learning, and it's going to change, but no.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. And I think while we've got a small team, not been that hard. I've hired people for the most part I had existing relationships with. 6 of us in the team now. It's going to get trickier, I think, when you bring in people without that existing relationship, who you've only known them from like an introduction or interview, and then suddenly you're interacting with them all the time. And so I think that's going to be interesting. But I think management structure is something that we're going to really work on and make sure that we've got something that makes sense there. Yeah. It's probably, so sorry, that's a really long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's great. I appreciate it. And thanks for the transparency and sharing the story. And I'm really interested to see how far you can take it. Because I think it's you're kind of on the cusp of the kind of new wave of businesses and using the technology exactly in the right, like it's in a functional way rather than just, as you said, like a gimmick, but you've got it fully embedded in the process. So it's awesome.
Thank you. I do think we're in the right place at the right time. And the only reason, and that's not like me it's just like, what is it? It's like luck is when, preparation meets opportunity. And like, this is my third business, like, and I've been grinding at this for like 6-7 years. So yes, we're in the right place at the right time. But if you hang about enough, you will be in the right place at the right time. And you keep applying yourself. And that's kind of the situation we've ended up in, like with everything that's happened with COVID and with everything that's happened. And our journey is kind of like, it's not been serendipity. We've gone down this route for a reason. But it's definitely, when it does take off, it's not been overnight. Definitely, we've been really testing and failing and iterating for a while.
Yeah, that's what they say, the 10-year overnight success, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think we're probably going to be about right for us. From when I first left my job 6-7 years ago, I reckon we're looking at the 10-year overnight success.
Exactly. Max, thanks so much for coming on the show today, man. Really, really enjoyed it.
Thanks, James.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sports, or on my account at James_ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle.
I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sport.